year. Now happens to be here on Daled Adar, marked the Hilula of a famous rabbi of Sderot Rabbi, I think we mentioned about before in the series. His name was Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun, Zecher Tzadik Libracha. I'm not too sure the exact date he was born, but I think he passed away in February 1972. I think it was the 4th of Adar, and I think he was the first rabbi of the city of Sderot, respectively, over there. Now, it's actually interesting. He was born in Morocco. I'm not sure the exact date. And he would actually get ordained to the rabbinate from the rabbis in Morocco. And then later on, he would make aliyah to the land of Eretz Yisrael. I think it was maybe around the Hey Tashin Yud Chet area in itself. But he would be appointed a head rabbi of Sderot and parts of the Moatzot Hadatit over there, which is very... let's just say, prominent in of its own right. So he would have connections with many, many people and do huge amounts. We're going to explore some of the things that he does, but we will explore a bit about the city of Sderot also over here, because I think it's very much important to talk about it, to hear the science about the places that we're talking about, and so on and so forth. It's actually located very, very near Gaza. This city happens to be. It's in, let's say, a western Negev city in of itself, and had a population as of 2023 of as many as 35,477, very, very close to Gaza. A notable place, let's say, for having a major target of Qassam rocket attacks, especially between 2001 to 2008. This area, I think, unfortunately had rocket attacks on the city, which killed 13 people. And let's just say, I think in recent years, it's been actually, let's say, chosen as a model for Israeli cities in the implementation of urban forestry in of its own right. So very interesting. Let's speak about the city in of its own right, because Rabbi Bin Nun is going to become a head rabbi over there, one of the first ones. So I think it was... Sderot was founded in 1951 as a transit camp for Jewish immigrants. Initially, I think there was 80 Jewish families over there, and it was originally called the Gabim Dorot, if I'm not mistaken. And then, there'll be development at that point in time, and permanent housing was completed. I come up 1954. Jewish immigrants, mainly from Morocco, if I'm not mistaken, will come there. Also, Romanian Jewish immigrants will come to Sderot, and I think in 1961, North African immigrants, mostly from Morocco, made up 87% of the population. I think later on, immigrants from Soviet Union and also Ethiopia will come in the 21st century. Has actually seen a lot more within regards to that, but it's a place that I recommend everyone to visit also over here. And how important actually that would be in its own right. So, but Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun, I believe, will become one of the first rabbis of this specific city. So that's very interesting to just mention that in of its own right. So very, very interesting. I think the first Rosh Moatzot in of itself happened to be someone named Yitzhak Zakai, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, he was a key figure also inside the city. Other people like Yonatan Yifrach, for example, and there was Yitzhak Triki, Hanina Amos, Yaakov Elkabetz. So very, very let's just say, interesting stuff. I think people like David Boskila, Amir Peretz, for example, will also have a prominent role there. I think later on he'll become a head of the Labour Party of Israel. So that's, let's just say, very, very interesting in of its own right. But we're speaking about Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun over here today, who would become a head rabbi over there in Sderot, and a place that we've mentioned about here on various occasions for here inside this series. Let's explore. Okay, so it's actually interesting. So Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun, we know that he would take on this position. He passed away, I think, around the year 1973. That was the time for his passing. They say actually his chatonot shel Rabbi Ikuwasi, he was, I think, directly connected to another famous rabbi, if I'm not mistaken. The famous rabbi we're speaking about is Rabbi Yeshua Shimon Chaim Obadiah, who happened to have passed away in 1952. I believe that Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun was actually his chatan, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll have to double check on that one. So who was Rabbi Yeshua Shimon Chaim Obadiah? He lived between 1872 to 1952. He was a head rabbi of Tzafro in Morocco over there. was author of a Shelot Shuvot book called the Smach Levav, if I'm not mistaken, and various other books in its own right. And I think he would work with the Pa'il Tzioni when he was young. He was a Shliach Tzibur in a synagogue over there, would learn Torah under auspices of his father, if I'm not mistaken, we'll have to point out over here, and take on various different importances. And I think in 1901, after his father passed away, he was actually appointed a Shliach Tzibur inside the Beit Knesset of the congregation of Tzafro, and take on various other important roles. He would work as a Gabbai Tzedakah also, another prominent position, and had, let's say, strong connection with other rabbis, including Rabbi Yeshua Va'ish, if I'm not mistaken, another. I think we did actually record a video about him at one stage in time, if I'm not mistaken. It's actually going to be his Hilula very soon. Rabbi Va'ish is Hilula, I think, on 18th of Adar, which is just around 2 weeks away, just under 2 weeks away in of its own right. And he had connection with the other rabbis, if I'm not mistaken, over there, I think, including Rabbi Yismach Ovadia, another rabbi I think we mentioned about here on this. So I think he was quite close to Rabbi Shalom Azulay, who was another famous rabbi, Rabbi Shalom Mordechai Azulay, who was an educator, Posek Halacha, a head of Jewish court of the Sephardi community in its own right, and the Rosh Yeshiva, I think, of Or Olam, and a part of the Chever Moatzot Datit, if I'm not mistaken. And Rabbi Ovadia, if I'm not mistaken, I think in 1939 would actually work in Rabbanut of the city of Safra in Morocco, and this was a position he would have for 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And it's interesting. I think his son was Rav David Ovadia. Very interesting enough. So I want to give his full title, Rav David Masud Ovadia, who lived between the years 1913 to 2010, quite recently. And he was also a rabbi of Safra, if I'm not mistaken, Rabat in Fez, in Marrakesh, in Morocco, and would do various important things. Actually, very interesting. So he was a key rabbi at that point in time, and they're very much connected, a lot of these rabbis together. So that's something we have to point out. So I think he would be connected to another head rabbi of Sderot, who would actually take over from Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun in of its own right. So that's very interesting. Everyone was speaking about Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun over here today, who was the chief rabbi of Sderot. I'm speaking about other rabbis that he was close to, and he was a chatan of famous Rabbi Yeshua Shimon Chaim Ovadia, who was a great rabbi of his day, and that's very important to say. But his brother-in-law, I believe, Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun, would have a brother-in-law. His name was actually, so let's speak about him for a minute, Rabbi David Ovadia. I believe that was his brother-in-law, if I'm not mistaken. I have to just to work it out over here. So the chatan of the father, so very interesting. So his sister would have probably been married, I'd assume, to Rav Yakov Bin Nun. So let's say a word about Rav David Ovadia over here. As before, he was working in Safra, in Rabat, in Fez, in Marrakesh, in Morocco. If I'm not mistaken, he won a prize as Yakir Ha'ir Yerushalayim in 1985, if I'm not mistaken. And he was actually born in Safra. We said before his father was Rav Yeshua Shimon Chaim Ovadia. And she learned Torah under auspices of Rav David Attar, another great rabbi in the Posek Halacha of that point in time in Morocco. And he had various important positions he would become, especially in the city of Rabat. And I think he would become rabbi in Fez in 1961, and for several years. In 1963, he will actually go to Marrakesh to become a head of Jewish court there. So you can see, and then eventually, I think the Beit David Yeshiva in Safra was connected to him. And he was very famous to be against the Alliance school system. Also, that's something that we should point out. And I think he would eventually move and make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael in the year 1963 and become appointed as a Chaver L'Sachet Rabbanut B'Yerushalayim, if I'm not mistaken, over there, and have positions of Vagan also. And we'll take on various important positions. He'll have correspondence with Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. And I think in 1967 he would actually form a Chevra B'Shem Dovev Siftei Yeshanim, if I'm not mistaken. 1982 he would win the Jerusalem Prize over there. In 1985 he would win the Yakir Ha'ir Yerushalayim Prize in itself, and he himself passed away, I think, at the age of 97, and was buried in Haram Nochot in Jerusalem. right next to Rav Shalom Mashash in of its own right. So you can see this is a famous family, let's just say, in of its own. And it's actually interesting. His daughter, Ruth, would actually get married to Rav Dov Ber Chen, who will become a rabbi of Sderot after. So that would be a connection, let's just say, to Rav Ber Chen would be related, I believe, through marriage connection with the previous Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun, who we happen to be speaking about today. Friends, we're going to take a short 1 minute break. We'll be back in 1 minute. So just watch your space and be patient. We're going to come back and return in just a minute time, friends. Hi, Shalom everyone. Thanks for the patience over here. And we're exploring a few highlights in regards to Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun. He was a head rabbi in Sderot of his day. And we're speaking about his father-in-law, I believe, who he was very much connected to, who was also a famous rabbi over there, which is very, very interesting. And we can explore more within regards to his family, because it was a very, very decorated family in of its own right. yeah, it's actually interesting. So we were speaking about Rabbi David Bar Chen, if I'm not mistaken. That happened to have been, I believe, his brother-in-law, if I'm not mistaken, or very, very much connected to him. So who was Rabbi David Bar Chen? Also have a connection. Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun, as we just mentioned about beforehand. Okay, so Rabbi Bar Chen. Rabbi David Bar Chen lived between 1929 to 2011, if I'm not mistaken. He was obviously a rabbi in Israel in of its own right. I think of Morocco. He was a Moroccan rabbi. He became rabbi of Sderot, and let's just say, circa one of the main Moroccan rabbis in Israel in its own right. So he was actually born, I think, in Morocco to Rabbi, I think, Lemukubal Rabbi Meir Ochana, if I'm not mistaken, and very, very interesting enough, and. I think they would actually come from another famous rabbi, Rabbi Silman Ochana, if I'm not mistaken, this famous Kabbalist of his time, and very, very great, let's just say, of that period in time. Hopefully we'll record a video also about him at one stage in time. I think in 1939, he would actually learn in Meknes, in yeshiva of Rabbi Raphael Baruch Toledano, Rabbi David Bar Chen did, and then he would learn in Yeshivat Otzah HaTorah of Rabbi Raphael Abo, another rabbi we've spoken about beforehand, and afterwards I think the famous or Yosef Yeshiva in Novohardak, and then eventually he would go to, I believe, to France and learn under auspices of Rabbi Gershon Liebman, another rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions before. He was, let's just say, head of the Mostot of Novohardak in France over there, which is very, very important. 1950, he made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, and he became quite close to Yeshivat Ponevezh, if I'm not mistaken, and Rav Yosef Shlomo Kahanaman, if I'm not mistaken. And I think in 1955 he would return to Morocco over there and become a ram inside Yeshivat Etz Chaim in Tangier, and with other famous rabbis over there at that point in time, especially Rabbi Yisachar Meir, if I'm not mistaken. 1956, his daughter would actually get married. If I don't know, it says Nisala root, but Harab David Ovadia, Rosh Abedin Safro, Marrakesh first, and Monet Alachinocha Yudi Morocco. So very interesting. And after that, I think he would actually, it says Lachat Kufa Katsarasha Amad Berishut Akolel Shel Chami Betzafro. אבל הרבת וכיהן כראש בית מדרש לרבנים מיסוד של הרב שאול בן דנן. Wow, very, very interesting. Rab Rashi Morocco, he was the chief rabbi of Morocco in its own right. And I think in 1964 was appointed rabbi of the neighborhood, of a specific neighborhood in Israel. Ashdod, 1972 was when he became the chief rabbi of Sderot. Very interesting enough. And we hopefully will record a video about Rabbi David Bar Chen also at a later stage over here in this series. And he passed away, I think. His son, Rabbi Harab Yishai Bar Chen, will become a head of the Ezor, let's say Gush Katif, very interesting enough also. And he passed away on the 26th of Elul and was buried in Har Menachot and wrote different writings, several different writings, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a lot of things that's placed in this famous rabbi's memory. And he had many, many great, let's just say, Talmidim, including Rav Shlomo Shlush, a very famous rabbi, head rabbi of Haifa, Rabbi Avram El Haddad, for example, Rosh Motzot Otzah Torah, Rabbi Sadia Aribi, rabbi we've spoken about here, Rabbi Yoram Abargel. Wow! So you can see the grandeur stature he had. Rabbi Aryeh Gamliel, who was a Rosh Yeshiva in Sderot, also that we should point out. Rav Tzvi Fadidia, Rabbi Raphael Al Karith, and Rabbi Shlomo Parsha. Interesting enough, so Rav Gamliel also would have a key role in Sderot in of its time. He would be the head of Yeshivat Sderot. He passed away in 2021. He was born in 1951. He would become a Chaver Knesset of the Shas political party, if I'm not mistaken, and had various different important positions. I think he would be actually from Sderot, if I'm not mistaken, and you can see he would achieve huge amounts. I think he was for 14 years in the Knesset, between 1988 to 2003. Very, very impressive run. So that's, I must say, is very, very interesting, friends. So, it just gives us a synopsis of this famous rabbi's life over here and the family. So, Rab Bar Chen would actually be, I believe, the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun. And then afterwards, I think between 2012 to 2022, Rav Moshe Hablin will actually have a prominent role over there. And then Rabbi Tawil will become the head of the city quite recently. So very interesting. So he's the most recent, let's just say. He was born in the year 1969. And was the head rabbi of Sderot currently, and was part of Ramoth and the Rosh Kollel of Yeshivat Afikei, and he's Dayan also, a Jewish judge, so very prominent position. I think he's from Kfar Saba originally. So that is very interesting. So friends, everyone tuning in live, we're exploring a few of the highlights in regards to Rabbi Yakov Bin Nun over here. He was a chief rabbi of Sderot. I think there's Beit Knesset named after him. Al Shemo Beit Knesset Letzerim Brit Yaakov. Interesting enough, so that is what's pointed out over here. And yeah, it's his Hilula, the famous rabbi. And don't forget to light candles in his memory. Friends, over here with a community, we are exploring history with regards to famous rabbis of yesteryear from all over the different places, especially from Ottoman countries, North Africa. We try and explore the Asian countries, and we're one of the very few places, we must say, in English that will actually do biography videos of great Chachamim of yesteryear. So that is definitely a great privilege. I hope our accuracy level is good. It's very, very, very good. It's important, but I do use information from places like Wikipedia. I will point that out from the beginning, and how important actually is to spread over within regards to the history of famous rabbis of yesteryear, especially when we're talking about places, special places like Sderot, to just get a feel how the rest of the country is feeling in its own right. So he was a head rabbi in Sderot, and that was obviously very, very prominent position. It was also on this channel we record videos and interviews with famous current rabbinic personalities. So that's something very, very exciting that we're doing at the moment. I'm very proud of that. So we've already recorded with about 500 rabbis or close to that. So hopefully we're going to go from strength to strength and learn about more famous rabbis of yesteryear. Now, if you descend from any of the great rabbis we happen to be speaking about, friends, please send me an email. I would love to hear more information. And if you feel anyone is interested in watching any of these videos, friends, please share these videos also to other people. And it's the best way of keeping a community together, growing, learning, exploring Israel, and all the other importances within regards to it. And I think on that note, we're going to wish you all a good night. And thanks for watching. Thank you. Appreciate it.